in India and other South Asian countries, where we have seen there's a decline in a number of mortality from climate-related events in highly decentralized context. So in this wider context, from our perspective, decentralization is an absolutely critical vehicle if you want to take climate actions at the local level, and specifically to make sure the impacts faced by the most vulnerable are reduced. So under ADB's Community Resilience Partnership Program, which is a joint effort between social development, governance, gender, and climate change colleagues, the whole focus is how do we take the agenda of climate resilience at the local level? And decentralization has been identified as a major topic under that program. So in that context, I'm very happy to have with us colleague Rachana Shrestha from the Public Sector Management and Governance Sector Group for today's Insight Thursday. Rachana, of course, many of you know, she's a public financial management specialist with extensive experience on localization of SDGs, governance, wider PFM reforms, etc. Very happy to have you, Rachana, with us today. And Rachana will walk us through from a decentralization agenda, how this agenda can be forwarded in terms of building local resilience, and then we'll open up for discussions. So I'll hand it over to Rachana now.
Thank you, Arghya. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to share about the interrelationships between decentralized governance system, local governments, and climate adaptation solutions in achieving climate resilience. I will also discuss constraints faced by local governments in integrating adaptation solutions, creating an enabling environment for transformational actions, and contribution of strategic programs like Community Resilience Partnership Program in filling the adaptation gaps. So we'll start with a very quick look on the impacts of climate change in Asia and the Pacific region. Though you are all aware of the intensity of the impacts of climate change, I just wanted to share with you some facts to set the context. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC 2022 report, the extent and magnitude of climate change impacts are larger than estimated in previous assessments. This also undermines efforts to achieve sustainable development goals. The threat posed to Asia and the Pacific region is particularly significant given that the world's largest population resides in the region, and 13 of the 30 countries most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change fall within this region. It is actually estimated that without climate action, the GDP in the region would decrease by as much as 3.3% by 2050 and 10% by 2100. According to the State of the Climate in Asia 2022 report, there were 81 weather, climate, and water-related disasters in Asia in 2022. More than 5,000 people lost their lives, 50 million were directly affected, and more than 36 billion incurred in economic damages. Clearly, the impacts in the Asia and Pacific region are significant. There is hence an immediate need for climate adaptation solutions in the region that can be implemented at scale. So the next slide. And here, okay, before we jump into the implementation of the climate adaptation solutions, I thought it's important to understand the interrelationships between climate adaptation solutions, decentralized system of governance, and climate resilience. And that's what I'm trying to depict here in this slide. And it got a bit crowded. I'm sorry for that. Let me explain what I'm trying to show here. The chain on the left side of the slide is basically about determining adaptation plans or solutions following climate risk assessment. So this is a pathway to climate resilience. And as per the IPCC, adaptation is about making adjustments, and I stress this, adjustments in ecological and socioeconomic systems, as well as in structural and non-structural measures. Structural, such as infrastructure projects, and non-structural, such as policies, regulations, etc. So climate resilience will be achieved, and I put the plus SDGs, along with climate resilience, SDGs can be achieved when necessary adjustments are made as guided by the adaptation plans, and these are complemented by appropriate implementation and financing mechanisms. So this is, these measures plus these adjustments plus these implementation plans, as illustrated on the topmost part of the slide. Now, a question arises as to who is responsible to make those adjustments and how. And this is where it is important to discuss the decentralized system of governance. Decentralization is often discussed in the context of multi-level governance, where two or more levels of government share authorities and functions as per the law or the constitution of the country, and are mutually dependent on each other. There are different modalities of decentralization. Primarily three, as I listed here. Devolution is often used synonymously with decentralization, which is the transfer of decision-making authorities and resources to elected representatives at the local level. While countries can be organized as a unitary or federal states, they all rely on local authorities as entities for the delivery of various services, including implementation of climate adaptation solutions. So a decentralized system of governance serves as a mechanism to execute the adaptation solutions. Local is notably highlighted here, given the linkage it has with climate risk assessments, solution determinations, and mechanisms. Also, please note that community engagements are critical for both climate resilience pathways as well as the meaningful adjustments and implementation. So we could basically say that local with community engagements serve as a common denominator in solving climate resilience equation. Maybe needless to say, but all levels of governments are interdependent in executing climate actions. I'm not trying to say that it's only the local government. It's that the local governments are the main actors in executing the local adaptation plans, but then they need policy advisory, technical assistance, and financial support from higher government levels. An effective coordination mechanism is therefore very key, which we will discuss later. So next slide. Now, to further stress on the importance of local entities in attaining climate resilience, let me share a few facts. Localization is the new globalization. This phrase was echoed during COP27 in Egypt. This demonstrates the role of subnational local governments in delivering the Paris Agreement goals. The critical role of subnational and local governments is also highlighted in international agreements and frameworks, including the Paris Agreement, Sendai Framework, and Agenda 2030. Most importantly, local governments have the responsibility to make those adjustments, as I was emphasizing earlier. The adaptations are about making adjustments in the policies, plans, systems, projects, programs, all those to achieve the climate resilience, as they're responsible for public service delivery and local public investments. According to OECD, subnational governments are responsible for around 29% of total government expenditure and nearly 40% of public investment in Asia and the Pacific region. Also, Regions 4, it is a global network of subnational government, estimates that 50 to 80% of adaptation and mitigation actions already are or will be implemented at the regional and local levels. So as I mentioned earlier, national, subnational, and local governments are interdependent in executing climate actions. Now we can move to the next one. Now this slide, now we have emphasized enough of that, and I'm sure that there's no longer doubts on the importance of local governments in implementing climate adaptation plans. Questions arise as to whether or not they are capable of this. The answer is both yes and no. And in fact, there's a big no. I try to put a bigger no there. Yes, because they have the mandate to deliver public services and execute public investments. And it is critical to ensure that they are climate resilient so as to protect lives and livelihoods. After all, they are accountable to people. Then they have local and indigenous knowledge and understanding of local circumstances, patterns of change, needs, and preferences. So they could provide locally tailored responses as well as integrated solutions, as they can coordinate more effectively with concerned agencies and authorities on the ground. Local governments are also capable of swiftly mobilizing resources at their disposal. This was witnessed during COVID-19 pandemic in many places. Now, looking in the no, there's a range of issues and constraints they face. I put the key ones here. One is a weak legal and policy framework in view of unclear and misaligned functional assignments, insufficient autonomy, and lagging formal assignment of climate change related functions to local governments. Then we have poor institutional capacity is a major contributor to no. a large number of local governments are constrained by weak institutional capacity, and besides this, they have poor technical skills and weak monitoring systems. So it's also, also they do not have the ability to internalize climate change related laws and actions into local plans, programs, and budgets. So this remain a major challenge. Inadequate resources, and here I would like to put resources on all three fronts: finance, human, and technology, remains a key constraint. And because they have a low own source revenue, the central transfers are not enough. But besides that, the studies have also shown that resources not reaching the local level due to various bottlenecks, which need to be unlocked. So in view of the inadequate funding and financing, local governments tend to neglect or underplay climate resilient infrastructure development, hence exacerbating this, disaster risk and vulnerabilities. Also, they are plagued by inadequate and skilled human resources and lack of technologies for effective risk management. And then we have poor coordination, collaboration, and partnerships. Now we have two more slides. This next one. Now, okay. What should be done then? Given the significance of local governments, it is imperative to address the challenges they face and create an enabling environment for local governments so that they can take transformational actions. The slide describes some of the crucial actions under the four main challenging areas discussed in the earlier slide. So, I know there's a constraint of time, so let me not go through all the details. So, whatever the challenges we have identified in the earlier slide, this slide try to highlight what are the things we could do to address those challenges and create the enabling environment. Again, institutional capacity, stronger legal and policy framework, well-functioning governance framework that is characterized by effective coordination, increased funding and financing with emphasis on the domestic resource mobilizations, alternative financing options, and also intergovernmental fiscal transfer systems. So then we move to the next one, because creating this enabling environment needs consistent and coordinated support from all government development partners, all stakeholders. So acknowledging this, ADB CCSD developed the Community Resilience Partnership Program. This is a 2-minute video, and I want to play this video so that it provides, this is actually the last, I would say the last slide. So there's a link at the bottom there. Yeah, so we can, this will narrate the key details about this program. Let's watch.
Rachana, I think there's no sound of the video.
Thank you, Arya. I heard that there was no voice in the video. I'm sorry if there was a technical glitch, but I hope you were able to read the, the titles there. And you can actually get this video in our website for later watch. Okay, this is the last slide. I won't go through this because this provides a quick snapshot of the CRPP, which we just watched. So let me not go through this. This is only for the reference. Now, this is the end of my slide. And the next one is basically thank you. Yeah. Okay, many thanks for attending and listening in.
Thank you, Rachana, so much. Thank you, Rachana, so much. And sorry for the on the issues around the video. I think this is very, very critical because what you talked about is this: if 39% of public investments are actually happening at the local level, then if we can enable and ensure that those public investments are all resilient, then of course that has a huge impact from a climate risk point of view. So for me, let me open up and let's take questions from colleagues who have joined, questions specifically to Rachana, but also some of you work on these topics. You may want to share your ideas and thoughts as we move along. So the floor is open, please.
Hi, thanks so much for the presentation, Rachana. I was looking at this draft of the midterm report for the Strategy 2030, where it was emphasizing the need for subnational government engagement, particularly new mix like Indonesia, where I'm based. And we've been trying to increase our activities at subnational level for many years, but it's not straightforward at all, mainly due to the sort of legal environment in Indonesia. And I just wondered if there are any sort of broader, more corporate-wide discussions about sort of financing modalities and instruments or ways of being able to have that financing directly at subnational government level, which perhaps I haven't heard of or haven't come across through our programming work here.
Thanks, Anna. Rachana, you want to take a question? Yeah.
Okay, actually, I may not be able to answer this question, Anna, but yes, I'm so glad to note that the midterm review has emphasized local government engagement. And I must say that just before this session, me and Arga were actually discussing as to what should be done or what need to be done at the higher level to enable this kind of, we cannot just say that, oh, yes, local government's engagement is important, but how do we make that possible is an important question. So I'm glad that you feel the same way, and you see that in Indonesia, and Indonesia was an example that we were just discussing, and how to the corporate-wide discussion, the financing modality, and all. I think that merits more discussions. I mean, we all here. I think I am an advocate of the importance here, and that's what I try to emphasize or try to stress or try to show the importance here in achieving climate resilience. But maybe Arghya can also add on this one. But that's all I could say from my side.
Thanks, Roshan. And just to add, and I think it's a great question. So maybe there's a larger discussion we need to have as an institution, because if in the climate context globally there is a trend to delegate more climate responsibilities to subnational governments and local governments, then institutions like us, which now have a mandate to respond to that needs, we have to find maybe bespoke financing instruments to make it happen, and the incentive mechanism around that. So I think it's a great question, and hopefully we can take it for discussion with SPD and other colleagues to see how to even pilot it in a few countries where the systems are largely in place. I was in Bangladesh last week, and there was interesting discussion happening in the context of fiscal transfers, where government has now revised their formulas for fiscal transfer, largely looked at poverty and geographic distribution of population, and have added now a criteria around climate vulnerability, which means the fiscal transfers are now a factor also of high risk and vulnerability. So that's an important way of moving forward to make sure the subnational governments or authorities that are more vulnerable get certain higher percentage of fiscal transfer. This is one mechanism only, of course. So I think there are various ways of looking, and we can certainly explore more, and hopefully through CRPP in Indonesia context also eventually. Thanks for that, Anna. Any other questions, inputs from colleagues, please? I don't see any question. If I can, Rachna, ask you one from, sorry, there's a question from Craig, is it? Sorry, Ian. At the national level, we can influence policy and standards. What would be appropriate or high priority target at the local level? So at the national level, we can influence policies and standards, etc. But at the local level, what would be the most priority for us if we want to make this happen? Is it capacity? If it's what is the most, the stumbling block, I would say?
Right. Thanks, Arke. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult at the local level also because, I mean, that's why I was trying to emphasize this institutional capacity overall, because institutional capacity, not only in terms of the systems and processes, but also resources like human resources. So often local governments lack adequate and skilled human resources, and also, like the systems are not digitalized, so their operational efficiencies is quite low. So that makes it very complicated, and they are so busy with their own mundane things, daily. So they are not considering climate adaptations, or they think that that's a burden. So it's very important to raise the awareness that how that's impacting the lives and livelihoods that they are accountable for. So that's where I feel that we have to take an integrated approach, that it's not that, okay, this is the area that's lacking, let's focus on this one. So we really need to take this integrated approach in supporting the local governments, and not only build their institutional capacity, but also the support in raising public awareness, not only of the local governments, but also community, because that demand side governance is also important, because the community has to also understand how this climate change are impacting their lives and livelihoods, and they have to put the pressure on the government that, okay, please, utilize the budget that you have, utilize the resources that you have to make it climate resilient. So it has to come from all areas. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachana. Thanks. There is a question or suggestion from Craig that I would suggest too that local governments will be more willing and comfortable to come in if coupled with private sector clients. Of course, I think domestic private sector play an important role in this context. I don't know if you want to add anything from your side in private sector and how we bring in.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's why the emphasis on this coordination, collaboration, and partnerships on that 4 squares that I try to build, that, not only the institutional capacity, the legal framework, the resources, but there has to be a greater collaboration. Without it, the local government alone or central government, even with the governments alone cannot solve all the problems, because the problems are huge. There are a lot of things that need to be fixed, and, governments alone cannot do it, and their private sector has to come in, the other development partners, the stakeholders, NGOs, they all have a role to play, and that's where the collaboration and partnerships are, take a very important seat in this, place in this equation, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachna. Any other questions from colleagues or suggestions? Okay, this from Pinsoda. Do you want to come in, Pinsoda, and speak, or do you want me to read out? She says, we have an example of a project in Cambodia where climate investment had a piggyback TA grant where society organizations helped work with local communities to develop resilience plan. I think that's a fantastic example, because I think from our perspective, this collaboration between CSOs, specifically local community organizations and local governments, is very, very critical. I don't know, anything from your perspective?
Absolutely. Okay. That's why, I was emphasizing on this community engagements. And when I say community engagements, this is civil society, the people there. Their engagement is critical. I mean, even now international forums are recognizing the local and indigenous knowledge. So that can only come when we engage. And as I just mentioned about the demand side governance, this is very critical. And that can come from the CSOs and civil society. So yes, we need to really, look. I mean, I'll be happy to look into this TA as well and see what learning I have, but yes.
Thank you. There's a question, there's a hand raised by Faris. Faris, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah. Hi. Earlier in your slide, you mentioned about the community level engagement. Sometimes there's certain markets whereby sometimes the last mile of the I would say the local politics, whether at the regional level, can be the biggest stumbling block. They have short planning cycles. They may not have commitment. There could be conflicts between generating local revenue, which could be forestry, which could be mining and all that, against the national interests. How do we plan to address, and, because the more independent the local government are, the bigger the challenge, I think, from a national perspective. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, community engagement. I didn't put local politics there. I was talking more on the local government. So that way, somehow the politics is embedded in the local government. But I agree that it's not just about, the elected government, but other political economy play a major role. And yes, I agree that there's a short planning cycle. And that's why I also try to emphasize in my solutions or creating an enabling environment that there has to be a long-term planning and an integrated planning. So generating revenue, yes, there are asset management. I mean, there's a lot of things that at the local government level that, the local governments or local entities could do. Actually, resources is sometimes not so much an issue if you actually unlock the bottlenecks and to actually exploit the available resources that are on the ground, in terms of the property taxation or actually, generating revenue from the assets. So for this, again, the local governments really need a lot of support at all levels in terms of policies, legal, institutional, technical. So that's where I think we really need to provide more consistent and increased support to at the local level to unlock or to address these issues. So I agree with you all on this. These are all the issues that needs to be addressed. And political economy is a bit tricky, but still we can do that. And that's where I think the demand side governance and community engagements, these are very critical to also address this, because it's not about the technical matters, but it's about community engaging with the local politics that makes a difference. Thanks.
Thank you, Rashna. And that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. A couple of takeaways which I take back with me. One is, I think within the ADB systems, there is a lot of opportunities to pursue this agenda of decentralization and building local level resilience, whether through our work in the wider decentralization public sector management group, whether through the urban group, etc. That's number one. Number two, there's a clear need for having policy reforms which can be supported through our PBLs, for example, but also perhaps for institution, as Anna talked about, the need to think through about different kind of financial instruments which can then incentivize such actions. A key takeaway for me is also about the demand side governance you talked about. How do you bring the community engagement, local society organizations working with local government and building the capacity over time? And of course, everything is situated within the wider political economic context, which we cannot ignore. So with that, thank you everybody for joining, and big thanks to Rashna for sharing her insights. And we look forward to working with you on this topic and through the CRPP in future. Thank you, everybody.